While Córdoba was a place of dazzling glory and splendor that overshadowed other European cities while it was ruled by the Moors, Granada became the last Muslim capital in the days of the decline of Islamic civilization in Al-Andalus. Our route today will not only be dedicated to the history of one of the most remarkable cities in Spain, but we will also get a real aesthetic pleasure from the impressive architecture while walking through the glorious Granada. This thriving city with a population of more than 300,000 people is spread out at the foot of the snow-capped Sierra Nevada mountains. The first recorded settlement of Iberians dates back to the 7th century BC. Then, as is traditional for Spain, the Romans recognized it as the territory of Emperor Caesar and named it Iberus. In the 7th century, Muslims crossed the Strait of Gibraltar and conquered almost all of Spain, renaming the city Ilbera or Elvira. But it was not particularly popular until neighboring regions, such as the world-famous Córdoba, were at the zenith of fame. Everything changed when there was a coup in the Córdoba Caliphate, and the nobles seized the power of the emir, starting a new ruling dynasty, the Zirids. They moved the capital of their state to Elvira, which was called Medina Granada. Presumably, the name comes from the pomegranate fruit depicted on the modern coat of arms of the city. In any case, for Granada, it became a new birth and gradually, the city acquired the greatest influence in Al-Andalus. In the 13th century, under the rule of the Nasrid dynasty, this small emirate became an important trading center, receiving Muslims fleeing from territories conquered by Christians. During this period of unprecedented cultural and artistic greatness of the city, its most important monument was built, the Alhambra. The construction of the complex was started by the founder of the Nasrid dynasty Muhammad ibn al-Ahmar in 1238 on the site of an ancient Roman fortified fortress, and the construction of the halls, including the most famous Palacio Nazares, was completed in the 14th century by Muhammad V, a representative of the same dynasty. In this way, the Alhambra became the residence of the rulers of the Nasrid dynasty, demonstrating their power and strength until the 15th century, when the city was conquered by the Christians. But the result was so beautiful that the Alhambra is still considered a medieval wonder of the world, as well as the most magical architectural structure in all of Spain. Cálid Alhambra, or Red Fortress, is so named because the local soil has colored the stone from which it is built a reddish hue. The greatest wonder of the Alhambra is its mystery, because almost nothing is known about life in this palace. All documents were burned by the Inquisition. But that makes it even more interesting to reveal its secrets. The architecture of the entire building, from the arrangement of objects to the ornamentation on the walls, is based on a single geometric proportion of the ratio between the base and the height, which the Arab architects borrowed from the ancient Greek mathematicians. So this palace owes its perfection to extreme simplicity and strict proportion in calculations. Genius is always hidden in simplicity, and thanks to this, you can feel some magic in the Moorish architecture, as if you are surrounded by something magical. The entire Alhambra complex consists of palaces, mosques, baths, and other buildings surrounded by a 2-kilometer fortress wall. The territory is centered on two main courtyards, the Myrtle Court, with a long pool, around which are located the rooms of the Comar's Palace, where the official part of the caliph's life took place, and the Court of Lions, with an alabaster pool supported by the figures of 12 white marble lions, symbols of strength and courage, intended for his private life, including a section for the royal family and harem. The most popular part is the Palacio Nazares, or the Palace of the Nasrids, which is usually so crowded with tourists that when you buy a ticket, your visiting hours are assigned individually, and if you miss that time, you will no longer be able to get there, even though you paid for it separately. The most stunning place in the Nasrid Palace is the Hall of Ambassadors, located behind the Mirror Pond. It served as a kind of throne room for the Sultan, where he received foreign emissaries. The Sultan stood near the windows, decorated with bright stained glass, and seemed to be a ghostly silhouette in the blinding sunlight that penetrated the windows. Because of this, everyone present almost physically felt that a powerful ruler was standing before him, whose greatness could not be doubted. Every detail in the decoration of this palace is part of a well-thought-out scheme. The walls and shutters are decorated with intricate geometric patterns. The wooden coffered ceiling, which is folded into a puzzle of 8,000 pieces, symbolizes the complexity of Allah's infinite universe. And everywhere, Arabic calligraphy, poems, and lines of praise from the Quran. In the Muslim religion, it is forbidden to depict living creatures, because it is considered God's work. Therefore, they decorate everything with texts. The phrase "only God wins" is repeated most often in the Alhambra. It can be found here 9,000 times. Like the Sultan 600 years ago, we can escape from the palace to the most perfect Arabic garden in Andalusia. It is a perfect reflection of the description of paradise in the Quran. Even its name, Generalife, means paradise garden. Water, so rare and precious in most of the Islamic world, is considered the purest symbol of life. Numerous playful fountains and pools seem to constantly tell you about the long-forgotten past, when people of another era rested and strolled in these gardens, hiding their quiet secret conversations behind the sound of water. Despite the boundless peace surrounding the caliph and the palace, in the 15th century conflicts with Christians on the peninsula became more and more acute, and political instability became more and more noticeable. By the end of the 15th century, the Kingdom of Granada had become almost the last stronghold of the Nasrids in the Iberian Peninsula, holding on only thanks to trade agreements with Christian kingdoms, and constantly paying them tribute. But after the marriage of Ferdinand, King of Aragon, and Isabella, Queen of Castile, who united both their royalty and efforts to oust the Moors from Spain, the pressure on Granada became almost unbearable, and the troops of the Catholic monarchs surrounded the city. This conflict continued for 10 years until Muhammad XII Boabdil, the last Nasrid king, signed the capitulation of Granada on November 25, 1491 and handed over the keys to the city to the new rulers. The Iberian Peninsula was completely under Christian rule, and Granada was consecrated as an important Christian center. In 1492, one of the most important moments in the history of Granada took place, when the adventurous traveler Christopher Columbus, who wanted to prove to everyone that the earth is not flat, but spherical, and therefore he could reach India, sailing west, preparing for his fateful voyage, by road to the coast, he stopped in Granada, where he became an honored guest at the ceremony of Isabella and Ferdinand, who celebrated the end of the Reconquista, their victory over the Moors. Before that, Columbus visited all the royal courts of Europe, but no one wanted to finance his project. And only the adventurer Isabella, who had just won a difficult war, caught fire with his ideas. And despite the fact that their treasury was empty after many years of battles, although the cold-blooded and prudent Ferdinand was against such spending, she pledged her own jewels, but helped Columbus equip the expedition. As we all know, he discovered America instead of India. And although this became an even more significant milestone in history, Columbus himself did not learn about it until the end of his life. He returned to Spain without the promised riches, but his stories about new lands so impressed Isabella that she agreed to finance all his subsequent expeditions. As a result of this voyage, Europeans established themselves on the new continent, and Spain received significant colonies. This, like the victory over the Muslims in the West, became a milestone not only in the history of Spain itself, but also of the whole of Europe. The Middle Ages came to an end, and it was replaced by a new government and an era of discovery. This set the stage for Spain's Golden Age, when it became the largest empire on earth, and King Charles V of Habsburg, the 16th century Holy Roman Emperor, became the most powerful man in the world in just one generation. At this time, the process of Castleization of Granada took place, when the mosques were destroyed, and new buildings and churches were built deliberately as coldly representative as this Renaissance palace, which Charles built right in the middle of the Alhambra territory, although it did not match at all in style. But it made the right impression. The conquerors of civilizations build their residence on top of the enemy's palace. Now no one has the right to doubt the completeness of their power. Despite all the inconsistency, the palace of Charles V, built in the shape of a circle in a square in the middle of the Alhambra, was considered the best Renaissance palace in all of Spain. Although Charles himself almost never lived in Spain, for which he received the nickname the Absent King. By the way, this palace was never completed, because the king very quickly lost interest in it. It was only in the 20th century that its roofs were completely finished, and since 1939 it has been used as a museum. Another important building from the time of Charles V is the Cathedral of Granada, built according to the same principle as his palace. The construction was the Arc de Triomphe, built over a destroyed mosque to show the greatness of the victors over the defeated Moorish civilization. Next to the cathedral is the Royal Chapel, which is considered the main Christian site of Granada. Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon are buried here, along with their children, Philip the Fair and Joan the Mad, according to their wishes. Their tombs are decorated in the Renaissance style, with very vivid and realistic portraits. They seem to celebrate the humanistic spirit of the Renaissance, and with it the promising future of Spain. For more than 2 centuries, while Andalusia was ruled by the Nasrids, Granada was the most magnificent city in Spain, but after the fall of the Moorish Empire on the Iberian Peninsula, the city lost its strategic importance and fell into a long sleep. Modern Granada is a wonderful combination of the Moorish and Christian past, and this is best seen in the Albaicín Quarter, the medieval Moorish quarter with the living heart of modern Granada. It is located on the opposite hill from the Alhambra and is an interweaving of narrow lanes, with tall white houses that seem to have grown into the mountainside itself. There is also a modern mosque here, built in 2003, for the Muslim population of Granada, which makes up more than 10% of its inhabitants. This mosque fits perfectly into the local architecture, and is accompanied by the muezzin's call to prayer from the minaret in the traditional way, without amplification, which the non-Muslim neighbors insisted on. The mosque is located next to one of the most romantic viewpoints in Europe. Mirador de San Nicolás offers a legendary view of the Alhambra Palace complex in all its glory. We recommend that you visit the Albaicín district at sunset, as the streets themselves and the stunning panoramic view show themselves in their most magical beauty at this time. In Andalusia, few people go to bed before 10 o'clock in the evening, at which time everyone usually only eats dinner. Tapas bars, the best in all of Spain, are especially popular with local residents. They don't look like run-of-the-mill places with drinks and snacks. These are rather restaurants with a large selection of dishes and a wine cellar. But first of all, tapas is a meeting place and an important center of social life. The name tapas means a little snack, and literally cover or saucer. Apparently, earlier here, saucers were used to cover snacks from flies. In most of Spain you have to pay for tapas separately, but in Granada you get it for free with every drink you order. If you have time, take a stroll down the picturesque Carrera del Darro. This cobbled street along the Darro River is very picturesque and romantic, although it once had a different glory in ancient times. It was called Paseo de los Tristes, Passage of the Mourners, because it was along this road that funeral processions moved to the cemetery. And nowadays, it's a popular photo spot with views of the Alhambra that will take you to both El Bañuelo and Casa de Zafra. El Bañuelo is an ancient Arab hammam of the 11th century, and Casa de Zafra is a historical museum located in a 14th century house. In recent years, Granada has become the university city of southern Spain, where more than 80,000 students study. It is also the seat of the Supreme Court of Andalusia, the regional library, and the Music Documentation Center. Its official title is the Very Noble, Very Faithful, Famous, Great, Famous, and Heroic City of Granada. And charming monuments and picturesque nature make the city one of the most desirable tourist spots in the world.